Hey folks, good to see you all again. Welcome back to the farm. And a fine late spring day here in Canada. Of course, not all our days are fine. I can remember a few where things got a bit shaky. When I was a young fellow living up in the north end of Vancouver Island, a place called Port Alice, I suppose I've mentioned it before. Well, had some pretty shaky weather up there once. Well, more than once actually. The place was kind of famous for its weather. But for the most part it was famous because it had the rainiest spot in all of North America. So, an average of 344 days a year of rain. That's a lot of rain. But every once in a while you get tired of the rain and, well, one of those deals, you either be careful what you wish for or you put up with what you get. And, well, in this case, everybody was pretty tired of the rain, wishing something else had happened, and, well, we put up with what we got. It was November 1980, I don't know, 86 or 87. I think it might have been 1987. It was a year where the only thing that was big was everybody's hair and their egos, and not much else was going on. But I was living in a cabin that I'd put together up on a lake that was quite a sublime little spot called Alice Lake. And I was there with my, at the time, very dear girlfriend, who, oddly enough, mother had the exact same name as a very famous rock star. No, I kid you not. I'll give you a hint. Her mom's name was Alice Cooper. I'm not making this up. You can't make this up. You have no idea how hard it was to keep a straight face around that woman. You know, be like, "Hi, Mrs. Cooper." She just thought I was a really happy boy. But anyway, so her daughter's up a-living with me in Port Alice. And it's a fine November day. Spent the morning. It was what they call a long change. And that's a shift change where you get 4 days off. It's one of the things. He gets it right after graveyards. He works day shifts and then you work afternoons. And between day shift and afternoon you get like a day and a half, and then you go from afternoon shifts to graveyard shifts, and between afternoons and graveyards you get about another day and a half. You work 7 of each, and then you work 6 day shifts. Once that's done, you actually get 4 days off, what's called your long change. So I was middle of a long change with a 4-day off, and cutting up some firewood, because it's she do get a little bit chilly up the north end of the island in the middle of November, and December and January don't tend to be much better. Let me tell you, she does get cold. I mean, not snow up to your neck cold, but you usually get a little snow. I mean, a place that rains for, you know, almost every day but 20, you can expect to get a bit of snow in the wintertime. Of course, most of the time it wasn't quite cold enough, so we got rain anyway. But this was one peculiar November day. Every time I shut the chainsaw off, I could swear it sounded like a, you know, when you got one of them big jet airliners going overhead. Sometimes you can hear them from a ways off, and then they kind of get over the top of you, and then they kind of fade, and you know, that sort of thing. Well, it seemed every time I shut the chainsaw off, I'd hear this thing going overhead. I didn't see anything, but then again, it's, you know, you kind of have green for 20 days of the year, and everything's just kind of a dull gray the rest of the time. So, looking up at the sky, all you see was a whole bunch of gray real close. So, but no sign of this elusive plane. Well, this went on for the better part of the day. Broke for lunch and come in and mentioned it to the girlfriend, and she said, "Yeah, I heard that too. I thought maybe it was some of them fighter jets out of Holberg. You know, every once in a while they do these weird exercises where they fly up and down the north end of the island and out to sea and back again. It's a very private kind of air base. I'm not sure what sort of secret stuff they're up to. But we've been hearing this all day. And other than that, fairly normal day, nice and calm. In fact, after lunch, I grab my fishing pole and head down to the shore and get out on the furthest rock I can and throw my line in the water and grab us a couple of trout for dinner, because, well, trout and rice was probably our most eaten meal. I mean, if you're going to live beside a resource that's willing to provide your food, why not take advantage of it, right? Kind of like farming. Oh, I'm just doing a ricky-ticky job with this, aren't I? So I'm out there, I'm fishing away and doing my usual of having some pretty good luck. Because, well, I say it's that kind of an area, things just tend to be plentiful. You know, whether it's you're fishing or whatever, out of picking the mushrooms or the berries or whatever it might be. It's a place where you can, if you get half a brain, you can live off the land pretty darn good. So, of course, if you have a whole brain, you could really live well, but there ain't too many of us with that, is there? Now, I do believe we're going to be wanting to go this way. If I remember rightly, it works towards the wheel, don't it? Yeah. So the day wears on, and this weird airplane noise, well, it's getting louder, and it's getting more continuous. By about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's pretty much a constant. One of my friends from just up the lake is going by in his boat, and he sees me there fishing, and he pulls in, and he says, "What do you be thinking with this sound? That's kind of strange, isn't it?" Says, "I wonder if that's Holberg doing some kind of exercise." Well, I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to say, but I've never heard nothing like that before. And he says, yeah, well, you take her easy. I'm going to see you later. We got a community meeting for the food market tomorrow. And I guess I'll see you there. And yeah, we will do that, Stu. We'll see you tomorrow. So we're members of a food co-op. And basically what we did was we ordered all of our dry goods as a group. And of course the advantage of that is that you get real good prices. You know, you buy honey in a 1-pound container, it costs you $7. You buy it in a 50-gallon drum, and it costs you like $1 a pound. So that's what we used to do. And our meeting was the next day, so that's what Mr. Brody was referring to. Anyways, the day continues on. I finish up with my fishing and make sure my chainsaw is all sharpened up and such, because I'll cut some more firewood the next day. But being November, the sun's, well, not out for a heck of a lot of time. Alright, well, not the sun. The kind of dull radiance that the grayness gives off for a certain part of the day does tend to fade pretty early. So, head in for supper. It's starting to get kind of dark, and, you know, not much point being out there in the dark if you can't see what you're doing. It's only going to lead to trouble. So, getting relaxing. Notice that noise is getting louder. Yeah. Well, the breeze starts to pick up. Look out on the lake. Just barely make her out as the sun's going down, and she's starting to get pretty choppy, which is kind of unusual because it's a pretty protected sort of lake. It's usually pretty nice and pretty mellow. Well, this isn't on. That ain't gonna help me. Sorry, trying to concentrate a little bit. So yeah, weather just starts getting a little windier, and a little windier. pretty soon we realized that noise we've heard all day, that's been the wind, and it's coming in from just up the northwest and coming down the lake really, really fast. I'm thinking, well, we've had our share of storms. Imagine we're probably going to have a few branches come down on the cabin tonight, and might have to do some clearing in the morning, but it ain't the first time. So girlfriend and I decided we're going to settle in, maybe play ourselves a game of crib, and get the kid out, and, you know. Now, one thing you got to realize is my cabin ran off a 12 volt. It was a battery operated cabin. No, I kid you not. I had 6 big batteries, deep cycle batteries, out of some big cat graters. These are the sort of thing, and honestly, I used to find them up at the logging sites and such, and throw them on the back of the dirt bike and take them home. But don't tell anybody. There's no statute of limitations in this country, so they can still screw me for it. But anyway, so my cabin ran off of 12 volt electricity for the power. Pretty much everything else ran off of propane. I had a 100-pound tank out the side of the building that I would drag behind my boat into town every couple of months and fill up. So it's not like the power goes out or anything like that, but we noticed that roar was sure starting to get a little bit on the loud side, and well, that's pretty disturbing stuff. We gotta make a choice here somewhere. I think right here will do. So we notice the trees are starting to sway a little bit, and weather's really starting to pick up. The water's getting a lot choppier. I took a wander down to the beach at that point. Well, a little bit of beach. And she's blowing pretty good, and I mean considerably more than we'd normally see. I'll go back in and I tell the girlfriend, well, I think we're in for a real good storm tonight. Better stoke up that fire so she'll have time to burn down to a good bed of coals before we go to bed, because I don't want to leave her at all open while we're sleeping tonight, not with that kind of a wind. Because sometimes you can actually get enough wind, she tends to force the air back down your chimney, and that's not a good thing. So night's progressing, and it's getting really windy, and the noise of that wind, it's starting to reach a point where it's getting hard to talk over it, you know? And that's really unusual. Let's say we do get ourselves some wind, but not usually anything that crazy. So we're sitting there, and we're having our game of crib, and all of a sudden we hear this snapping sound, like somebody was breaking the biggest bone you can imagine in some Bugs Bunny cartoon or something, you know. It sounded more like a sound effect than a real thing. And well, the hell was that? Something gave, you know. Yeah. And then we hear it again, and then again, and within 10 minutes it's almost constant, and now it kind of sounds like popcorn pumped through an amplifier that's at 11, you know. And this sound is loud. I'm thinking, well, we realize what's going on now. What we're actually hearing is trees coming down, entire trees being snapped in half, and this is getting louder, and it's getting louder, and we can tell it's getting closer because we can hear trees that are right around our cabin now are starting to snap. And you know, I took one last trip outside, and a little look around, and I realized something very quickly. We were pretty much screwed. There's no way we can get out of where we are because the water is way too rough, The trail through the bush is, well, pretty much suicide at that point, because there is so much debris flying through the air. There are branches coming down constant. There are entire trees being knocked over one after t'other after t'other. And just as I grab the door of the cabin to head back inside, I look out towards the water. And right up alongside the cabin, we got a cedar with a base on her, about 12 foot around. And, you know, a real beautiful tree. And I watch as the ground starts to move. And all around the base of this thing. And I mean, it's too dark now. You can't see anything more than 10-15 feet away. And I say you can feel stuff blowing through the air. There's chunks of branches, and there's, of course, all the pine needles and stuff. I mean, we live right in the middle of the bush. And I watch for a moment, and then the entire ground rises around that tree, and the tree flops. It's being torn out by the roots, by this wind. Now we're talking a tree that's 12 foot through the butt. And I don't mean 12 feet in circumference. I mean she is 12 feet wide. You know, I don't know if you guys even seen trees that big, but they're not uncommon in the part of the world I'm from. Well, altogether this tree is well over 100 foot long. And I'm standing there, 20 feet away from me. This tree slides and slides, and then over she goes. And the pit that it left, I kid you not, was so big it became my firewood shed. So at that point, I'm back in the cabin, and I can see that my girlfriend is some scared. And I just don't know what the heck to do about it at that point. You know, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. The wind is picking up, the noise is getting louder. By now, someone sitting 2 feet away, you're yelling at them to be heard. Absolutely yelling to be heard. And the sound of the trees breaking is like a Tommy gun going off. It is a constant crack, 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 snap, bang, 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 bang. And you look, we got, you know, a cup of coffee sitting on the table, and it's just like that thing out of Jurassic Park where they first discover the, you know, the thump as the big Tyrannosaurus takes a step and the water goes wow, 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 wow in the cup. That's exactly what was happening from these trees snapping. So we sit there, and I'm thinking, well, that's the only thing I can do at this point is hope that nothing untowards happens with things like, oh, I don't know, our propane tank, for instance. So I shut the propane off, switch the lighting over to the 12 volt, because that's the only thing that we constantly run propane. The fridge, etc., runs off it, but I don't mind. You can shut that off. She's going to stay cold for hours. We don't deal in a lot of perishables anyway. It's just a tiny thing. So I shut the propane off, and we sit back. All night this goes on. Well, next morning arrives, and to our amazement, we're both still alive. Well, the fire blew out during the night. It actually got so intensely windy that we couldn't keep a fire lit in the fireplace. I'd never seen that before. I really even couldn't explain it, you know, other than the fact that I think maybe the air was passing over the top of the chimney so fast that it was actually creating a vacuum. I can't think of any other reason that would be happening. So next morning we head outside, and it's incredible, absolutely incredible, because every single tree, not most of them, not some of them, every single tree on this side of the lake that I'm living on is down. I can see all of my neighbors all the way up the lake. Never been able to do that before because the bush is so dense. So I look, first thing I notice is that big cedar tree, and realize that, hey, guess what? You've got what you always wanted. You now have a dock. Well, whoop-de-doo. As for the rest of the place, well, I have a look up the lake, and I can see my neighbor's cabin, Chris. He's about 400 yards from us, maybe a little further, maybe half a mile. And it doesn't look right. So I tell the girlfriend, look, put some coffee on, dear. I'm going to be back in half an hour. I got to go check on Chris. This cabin just don't look right. She says, well, you want me to come with you? And, well, you know, in a way I kind of wouldn't mind the company, but by the same token, what I'm really thinking is, I don't think my buddy made it. I really don't. Alright, that's our windrowing. So I worked my way down the beach over the fallen logs and rock and stuff. I get to Chris's place and I yell out, you there, buddy? Hey, Christopher. Christopher, you in there, man? And I'm looking at his place, and a tree has come down directly through the center of his cabin. And his entire kitchen and living room are gone. They're just gone. They're completely crushed. And out of what's left standing, which oddly enough is darn near perfect, being his bedroom, comes Chris. And he's, oh, geez, man, I thought all of us were dead last night. He says, I don't know what to do. He says, my boat got smashed. He says, yeah, are you all right? Do you need to be taken to town? Can we get you out of here? Are you physically okay? He says, yeah, I'm all right, man, but I got, you know. He says, look at this. And I look, and there beside the cabin, where he too had a 100-pound propane tank, I can see the tap piece for the top of the tank, right? The little crank that opens and closes the gas valve. And that's all I can see. Now, these tanks are about 5 foot long, and they're about 2 foot round. Well, a tree has actually come down, exactly hit the top of the tank, and driven it like a nail into a soft pine board into the ground. Now, why it didn't rupture and just like explode, I have no idea. But, well, needless to say, his power system, his water system, and his propane system are destroyed. Luckily, well, I mean, so is more than half his cabin, but luckily Chris is okay. So, send him back down. I go, well, you just head over to my place there, buddy. I know the girlfriend's got some coffee going, and we'll get you straightened out. And, I'm just going to go up and check Jan and Ian's place here next door, and I'll be back with you. So I continue on up the beach and make it to the next cabin in line. They've done a little better, and Jan and Ian are both out. I'm like, whoa, good to see you made it. Is Chris okay? It looks like his cabin didn't get very well. So I explained to them what had gone on there with Chris. Well, unfortunately, their place was, wow, that didn't take long, did it? Was about as far as I could get. Everything else was absolutely blocked by fallen trees. But I could see all the way out to the parking lot to Stu's place, the fellow that had come over to ask me about the co-op. His place looks okay, but I can also see in the parking lot that a lot of trees came down, and everybody who had vehicles parked there, they had better go and find out if they still own a vehicle or if they own a crushed up tin can. So I head back home and sit there with a girlfriend and my buddy Chris, and we have a coffee, and we're like, alright, well, let's head down to Brody's place, because being right next to the big main parking lot, that was sort of the meeting place of everybody at the lake. We get down there, and Jan and Ian are already there, and there's a couple of folk from across the other side of the lake, and the neighbors from the other side of Stu's place are there. And, well, everybody's pretty much showing up, as that community tends to do when things are, you know, questionable. I'm going to put it that way. And we decide at that point that what we need to do is try and get into town. Well, it's not terribly far to town. It's about 4 miles. It's, you know, pretty tough logging road type of thing, but it's only about 4 miles. Well, it took us 6 days. And that was with us, and pretty much everybody at the lake obviously owns a chainsaw. I mean, you heat your place with firewood, you don't have a lot of choice, and it's not like you can order up a cord of wood. You know, that sort of thing just ain't done. And 6 days it took us to cut our way with a crew from the mill working from the other direction, trying to get out to the lake to see if anyone had actually survived. Because there's, I guess there was 15 or 20 whole, in like, you know, cabins out at the lake, and some of them had entire families. Now, not a lot of the folk there had kids, but, you know, there was a few, so it was a part of the community up there. So, yeah, it took 6 days for us to cut our way out of the woods, along the road, clear enough space, enough logs and all of that stuff out of the way, that we could finally get out of there. Now, we did hear later from the weather office that winds had reached over 150 miles an hour and had never been recorded at those velocities before. So it was indeed a freak storm. But, well, I got a new fishing dock out of the deal, which was kind of nice. There were, in total, 4 cabins completely destroyed. 2 cabins, like Chris's, that were destroyed to the point where it was questionable whether they would be torn down or fixed up. And pretty much everybody else ended up with minor damage in one form or another. Oddly enough, even though we were in some of the densest part of the bush, you know, like I was well up the lake. I was probably 30 yards in from the lake. Most people were, you know, high water in the winter. You had to wonder if their porches were going to float. But oddly enough, it had absolutely no damage done to my cabin. So, yeah, I don't think I could turn this thing off, can I? No. What's in there is in there. Darn, 93%. Oh, well, I guess we'll take the 5 we got. But yeah, we finally made our way into town. The town folk were quite surprised at what they saw out there. I mean, you know, I'd lived there for, I guess up at that cabin for 3 years by that point. You know, we spent the first 2 basically making it livable. It was an empty bit of a shell that was half finished and full of holes when I bought it from old Dickie, the guy that was the original owner. So, and it was just never the same after that. I put a roof over the hole that big cedar come down, and like I said, used that as my woodshed from then on. And had myself a nice dock from where it went out into the water a good 60-70 feet, which really improved my fishing, by the way, because now I could get out to the end of that and, you know, work my butt off. It was great. So, but I've never, I don't know, I don't think I've ever felt so helpless, you know. Normally when you get yourself into something, or, you know, whatever life's going to throw at you, there's, you know, you have some sort of an option, something you can, you know, try and outplan, or, you know, take precautions, or, you know, but to sit there, like I say, having every tree in the forest around you falling, it was darn scary. Darn scary indeed. But what can I tell you? It got us through collecting all the grass, so I guess it wasn't that bad. I think that's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you enjoy your bus ride back into the city. And, well, next time up, I should have all this baled up for us. Take care of each other, folks. Have yourselves a great weekend. and we will see you next week. Ciao for now.